Welcome back to another episode of the Corporate Cowboys podcast. My name is Alex, and if you've missed me, well, a little proof of life for you. Today is Friday of all days. It's May 12th. Excuse the change in voice. I was out late last night. Was it last night? I was out late a couple nights ago and wore my voice out. So, with that being said, if you're not familiar with the podcast, the Corporate Cowboys podcast, this is a podcast tailored to professionals who want to develop themselves and empower themselves, elevate themselves to the level of a corporation. So an individual can negotiate directly with the corporation. I mean, if you feel unsure of your capabilities to do so, then by all means, reach out to us. You know where you can find us. We're on Instagram. That's at Corporate Cowboys with a Z. The podcast is also on Patreon. It's the Corporate Cowboys podcast. Additionally, you can subscribe to any of those tiers that are available. And there are a couple of links available also if you want to donate and keep this podcast free, which it will be as long as we're kicking and screaming inside of corporate, right? So, Corporate Cowboys do what corporate cowboys will. Now, today's question comes from r/career guidance. So you've got 30 minutes of uncut corporate cowboy opinion coming at you, right? It's not legal advice. I have to give you that disclaimer that it's not legal advice. Anything that we promote or publish, I should say, is not legal advice if it's not been tailored to you or if you haven't engaged us in a professional capacity. So just know that we do not promote, we do not condone any wrongdoing, any wrongful activity. So as always, take everything we say with a grain of salt. If the vest fits you, maybe you could zip it up, but if there's some space in between your rib cage and your plates, then it's not tailored to you. Don't use it. You can't blame us for what we put out and then you think you can just run with it, right? If you think you can run with it, you necessarily assume the risk. So, today's question is asking, why am I so unmotivated when I have a good job at a good company that pays well? Question mark. Why am I so unmotivated when I have a good job at a good company that pays well? I mean, just off the top, because this is a pretty long prompt, I'm probably going to rip through it because I don't want to interrupt this hypothetical client's line of consciousness, stream of consciousness, right? So you, the listener, get the full picture before I rip it apart with my opinions as a corporate cowboy, right? And my opinions are informed by not only personal experience, but professional experience, the experience of my colleagues and my previous clients as well, right? So I try to generalize as much as possible because corporate itself is an unliving, non-breathing, not flesh, not blood, legal person, right? It's a legal fiction if we're speaking legally. It's a legal fiction. So they don't necessarily exist, but they do operate through people. Right, so it's these people that you have to be mindful of, these directors or executives. And directors and executives can get it too. I've said it time and time again. Pretty much an overarching theme to the podcast is that everyone is entry level forever. You could get clipped one day to the next. One day you think you've got a really stable job and you're just showing up for the check, and the next you're terminated because The right to work is a right to work at will, and you could be fired at will just as easily. So, our hypothetical client wants advice. They've flared this post for advice, and they're asking, I recently accepted an offer at my current place of employment a couple of months ago due to be unhappy with my last employer. Maybe it's due to being unhappy with my last employer. It could be a typo. I have been job hopping every 1 to 2 years because of this. It's the same role, but different industries. Okay, so maybe it's administrative in nature, right? That's possible. That is possible. Maybe it's administrative. If it were technical, if it were the same role but a technical role, I doubt you could transpose it from industry to industry as easily as this person has. And they claim to be job hopping every 1 to 2 years, right? And we don't know how many years it has been. So it's been at least 2, maybe 3 different industries. So the same technical position more than likely is not possible, right? If you're moving from like an engineer to then a welder, right? And you're entry level at both of them. If you're an entry level welder and an entry level engineer, more than likely there is little, if any, overlap, right? So it's got to be something administrative, I'm thinking. Something not to the level of an executive, not to the level of like the C-suite within corporate. Maybe middle management. That's possible. But administrative, at least, right? They're not on the operational side. They're more than likely on the services side, if you catch my drift. So they continue. I doubt that things may be different at this new company as they are highly rated by employees and are considered one of the top places to work. I'm making over $100,000 a year. I have great benefits, got a huge sign-on bonus, and I work 100% remote. Okay, maybe it's IT, right? It could be IT at this point. If they're working remotely, it might as well be IT. If they're just working on service tickets and they could access workstations and computers remotely using Team Viewer or some other application, then they don't even have to show up to the office. They could just be working remotely. They continue, I like my team and people who work here seem happy. However, I still wake up not wanting to go to work and have trouble keeping up with my work due to the lack of motivation. I've been trying to figure out why. And the only thing that makes sense to me is I'm not motivated because I don't feel like the work I'm doing is meaningful. Let me cut you off right there. Let me interject something. If you feel like the work you're doing is not meaningful, it's because it's not. It's not that there is going to be the hunch, the gut instinct that you can rely on, you can depend on. If you don't feel like you're contributing in a meaningful way, it's more than likely because you're not. It could be that you've topped out your position for how much you could develop professionally. If it's become monotonous, routine, programmatic, systematic, then it might just be time for you to move on. Do something different. Something more that you could learn. Something different you could learn. And continue building on your professional skill set. So to get out of that rut that you're doing the same thing over and over and getting nowhere. That is called what? Insanity. And that's, if anything, what we in corporate, as a corporate cowboy, strive to get away from. It could run people mad. It could run people up a wall, make you go crazy. But You want to get away from the insane. You want to stay sane, but you want to keep from going insane. And sometimes you might just come off as crazy because you're wanting something different. You're wanting something more. You're not lashing out, but you're reaching out. You're grasping. And for some, they might not understand. Why is Alex not content? Why is Alex not complacent? Why doesn't Alex enjoy sitting still, being a sitting duck, resting on his laurels? Because Alex doesn't want to get caught lacking. Simple as that. So, the hypothetical client continues here. I've been trying to figure out why, and the only thing is that they make sense. The work they've been doing is not meaningful. Okay, I feel like the skills I develop at work don't have much application in my personal life, and all my efforts is purely to make the company more money. I've thought about a career change, but not much appeals to me, and the ones that do have average salaries that are about 30 to 40% of what I'm making now. So, all right. So they're in a spot where it's not even between a rock and a hard place, but they're in a spot where they're making money, they're making good money, and yet they don't think they're doing an adequate job to get ahead in life, right? So this could easily be one of those, I forget what the term is called, but there is a specific term for these useless jobs, these jobs without any real utility, any real social utility, right? It's just a filler, like a gap filler job where you just show up for the check, you get paid out, and because, I don't know, you got a degree for it, or because there's some sort of legal incentive, right? It could be like a DEI program or something else that the work is not as meaningful as it is loud, as it is scandalous or quote unquote revolutionary, right? So it could have this label of revolutionary, this label of impactful, but overall, I mean, what you're doing is just isolating and identifying problems, if anything, identifying and labeling, not even isolating, but you could be isolating individuals even, but pointing out problems where they don't actually exist, right? And that's not meaningful in any sense because you're not really creating solutions for them. You're just griping and whining, right? So that's at least my take on a lot of what DEI is. Sure, it might be well intended, but as far as execution goes, I mean, not really effectively executed. So they continue, I feel like the skills I develop at work don't apply in my personal life, and all my efforts is purely to make the company more money. Well, yeah, those skills for the most part, you apply for the job, so you should know what you got yourself into. If you're having doubts now, it's because you fucking grew a conscience after you've been getting paid out. How nice. How, check your fucking privilege. Why don't you one time, right? Now that you've made this money, maybe you got out from under some debt you might have had, but you're living lavish. Now that you've got some time to reflect on what the nature of nature actually is, what you're having second thoughts? What? I mean, you're in this deep already, baby. You signed the dotted line. So either you see this shit all the way through or you attempt to make some changes, but whining and crying about it isn't going to resolve your situation, right? If you want to move like a corporate cowboy, then you use the resources you have and make changes where you see fit, right? And it's always always going to be for the betterment of business. That's what the principles that underpin being a corporate cowboy ultimately accumulate to. They come to that peak of improving business. I mean, you really want to get down to the root of the origins of a corporate cowboy. It really was just a take. It's just a corporate take on cocaine cowboys. And cocaine cowboys started by using federal resources, was it not? From the 3-letter agencies who were overseeing and regulating the trafficking of this white powder. And the cocaine cowboys branched out for themselves, looking out for themselves and making the business of trafficking more efficient, making the business of trafficking more innovative. I mean, for their own sake, to an extent, but hey, at least they were professional about it, right? So they're getting paid out in the very end. If anything, you want to think about whether or not a corporate cowboy to that degree has enough resources that they could start an initiative of their own. I mean, it sounds like you're bored. It sounds like the hypothetical client is bored, right? Maybe they've got extra time or extra slack. If they're feeling unmotivated to do their work, I mean, it took them this long to jump on an online forum and a Reddit forum and air out their grievances. So we don't know how long they've been experiencing this. Maybe the first month or the first 2 months, or maybe the first year, they were still getting to know their position and learning the ropes of their corporate position. And in that time, they weren't complaining because they were professional development was at capacity and they couldn't stretch themselves any thinner. But now that they've got just about everything under their control, now they're finding they're bored. Now they're finding that they're lacking motivation, right? It's not unheard of, definitely. But that's when you know it's time to change. If not your job, then your approach to the work. That's when I mean, if you start, let's analogize you signing the dotted line. If you are not passive, right? If you're not just signing your life away and going to work as a subservient associate, colleague, you're signing the line with some form of aggression, some form of professional authority. That's you. That's you infiltrating the corporation. That's you slipping the knife between the coastal ribs of the corporation. And just letting it sit there, getting a feel for the work. I mean, shit, you got your hands dirty now. And so when you pick up the slack and you learn the ins and the outs of the position and you get bored, that's when you twist the knife. That's when you wiggle it around. That's when you get to know the actual corporate body that you are within, that you are inside. And start, branching out. Start networking. What the hierarchy looks like. What the hierarchy requires to operate. How the hierarchy operates. Its strengths, its weaknesses. The opportunities for your own advancement. That's how you move like a corporate cowboy. Otherwise, you're just going to show up on Reddit and fucking whine about it. So, continuing. Let me finish this off. It says, I like my team and people who work here seem happy. However, I still wake up not wanting to go to work and have trouble keeping up with my work due to a lack of motivation. Oh, I've been trying to figure out why, and the only thing that makes sense to me is I'm not motivated because I don't feel like the work I'm doing is meaningful. I feel like the skills I develop at work don't have much application in my personal life, and all my efforts is purely to make the company more money. I thought about a career change, but not much appeals to me, and the ones that do have average salaries that are 30 to 40% of what I'm making now. Yeah, no, it sounds like you're in a fucking useless position. Or you've stumbled into a useless position. Maybe they haven't expressly identified it. I'm sure if you told them to quit, they'd be like, no, where am I going to make money from? So, no, definitely they're still bound by it. They're still under the illusion that they're useful, but they don't know how to multiply their professional utility for personal gain or for personal realization, actualization, if we're going off of Maslow's hierarchy. So they write, have any of you been in a similar position? And if so, how did you break the cycle? I already talked about that. I pretty much walked you through the life cycle of an entry-level employee. You get started, you sign the dotted line. What is it? 2 weeks of training, maybe a month of training, maybe it's 3 months of probation. And in that time, you are learning, you are training, you are exercising, you are being evaluated on how well you learn the job and perform on the job. And in that span of time, it's pretty much taking the entirety of your professional capacity to really perform on the work, right? So maybe you're not spending much time or investing much time in feeling out your options and opportunities to grow in the company, which is fine, which is good. I mean, it's not always required of you. But at the point, at the junction in which you start feeling bored is when you should be thinking, what more can I do? And it doesn't necessarily have to be for the sake of making the company more money. It could be for your own development. Maybe you want to reach out to your proximate colleagues, the colleagues closest to you. Maybe you know some folks who are a little bit higher than you. Maybe your superiors could let you in on a little bit of what they do so that you could prime yourself for getting promoted. You want to move up, it's going to require you taking on more responsibility. And you take on more responsibility by showing initiative, by taking the initiative that demonstrates you being capable of taking on the additional responsibility and getting paid for it, right? But obviously the getting paid part is going to come later when you are evaluated for a performance review, if you will. And at that point is when you bring up and negotiate what it is you believe that you're worth. Right now that's higher level thinking. That's more higher level strategizing, which if you need help on, it's what we're here for, and it's what we do from day to day for our clients, legal, professional, or otherwise. You can reach out to us. So let me continue here. They add an edit, actually two edits. The first edit says, they've been at work and they see a ton of comments. This is such an important part of my life. I'm trying to figure out. So I'm going to do my best to get back to all of you sharing your thoughts. Thank you all for showing your support. Truly, it means a lot. Edit number 2 continues and they write, I want to thank you all for bringing your unique perspectives to this conversation. It was eye-opening to hear how many of you are in a similar position. I hope we can all find happiness however possible. Oh, fuck, here we go. Hold on. What? They write, after reading through all your comments, I think I'm going to do the following in this order. 1, rule out medical issues like thyroid/hormone. I mean, shit, I guess that sounds reasonable. I guess that sounds reasonable. As much as I'm very much gung-ho, hands-on, get dirty first, come clean later. That's typically my approach. I mean, if they want to be thorough, maybe, they have some kind of hormone or neurochemical deficiency, right? That we are just not privy to. So it's possible. It's possible. Whether or not they can get that shit kickstarted and normalized, who's to say? Who's to say, right? I'm not definitively writing it off, but I think that you can definitely work through it. I mean, they've been working through it now. I think what they need really is just some external motivation. If you have to pop something to fuel internal motivation, if the external factors don't fuel your motivation enough, I mean, it's just a lack of action at that point. It's a lack of action to be able to cultivate momentum and be able to get you moving, right? Yeah, you're at work, but are you actually working, right? You see what I'm doing there? Yeah, you're at work, you're present, but are you actually presently working? And I'm talking about on yourself. Are you growing? And if you're not, find a way to grow. I mean, at this point, it could just be a lack of inspiration, right? But, first is first. I guess you want to rule out any of that. And if you got to get medicated, you have to then weigh the pros and the cons of reliance, independence, and whether or not drugs will become a crutch. So, yeah, at least you got that going for you. That's just a whole nother branch of analysis. Number 2, they write, you talk to a professional therapist to make sure these feelings stem from something like ADHD, depression, or past workplace trauma. Past workplace trauma, huh? What, you've been in the field slanging lead or some shit that we aren't privy of? I feel like they would have put that in the Reddit post somewhere like, oh, this reminds me of the time I was slanging sacks and, well, I mean, if the workplace is routine and monotonous and you were slanging sacks every fucking day and nothing changed, like, really? You never got walked up on? You never got robbed? You never contemplated robbing somebody else, like living that life? But I get it. The corporate life and the street life can be analogized, can be parallelized to some degree, but it's not a one-to-one. I get it. It's not a one-to-one. Number 3, they write, continue my search for a hobby or something that I can enjoy and look forward to outside of work. Shit, bump that up to number 1, fam. Bump that up to number 1, right? If you're not going to make a move and develop yourself professionally to move up or to make some change, fucking rock the boat a little bit, not necessarily create drama, but at least make work entertaining for your professional development's sake, then fucking find a hobby, right? Leave your work at home. Leave your work feelings at work and leave your home feelings at home. So like if you if you really want to divide, because I mean, this third option of finding a hobby obviously isn't going to make your work life any better for your personal life. So you want to further create that separation and keep your work feelings at work and then cultivate a more home life. I don't know what you're going to end up doing. Maybe making kites or watercoloring. Do that. Do that if you think it's going to help you grow. And the key word is grow. Ultimately, the bottom line, the common denominator of my opinion so far has been to find something that helps you grow, something that's creative, something that's inspirational. And you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised to find how art can help you be creative in your professional endeavors for development. So I'll just leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. Number 4, look into volunteer opportunities where I can give back to my community. That's always good. That's always a nice touch. Number 5, they write, while doing the above, reflect on what is and isn't in my control and focus on changing aspects of my work that are in my control. Fuck me. In that case, number 5 should go into number 1. Number 5 should be bumped up all the way to number 1. Why? Because it's in line exactly. It's in line exactly with what your issue is now at work, and that is monotony. That is the boringness, the routineness, the programmaticness, right? What you're trying to break away from and change up. It could be that you haven't taken a step back and really evaluated your circumstances in the lens of professional development to be able to identify those opportunities, to be able to identify what is out of your control and what is within your control, something that you could change, something you could dictate the terms of, and you could always dictate the terms of your own professional development. Don't let anyone else convince you otherwise. Shit, that's how we got started, and that's how we are where we are in today's day and age, right? Letting folks talk you out of what makes you better is how we ended up with capitalism in the state that it is now, which is lacking, which is non-competitive, which is uncreative, which is not innovative. That's because motherfuckers choose to not work. They just show up for the check. And by work, I mean put in the fucking work. They just, choose the lollygag and go off and find a fucking hobby. But I suppose trying to make change from within does come with some risk. You may or may not get a target painted on your back if you want to rock the boat and make others uncomfortable. You want to create work for others, even if it's of a different kind, even if it's going to be less in the long run. A different kind of work to many who are stuck in the fucking matrix means more work. What? It's a different. I have to change the way I work. What? This is more work than. It's just it's like 2 + 2 = 5 for these motherfuckers. They can't put 2 and 2 together. Something you got to live with. It's something you have to live with. And if you cannot convince them otherwise, well, there's corporate, and then there's Cowboys, which is coming back to the overarching theme of its entry level forever, and business being war, and how the West, it's never really been settled, right? Business is war. It's corporate war. And it's technically what you signed up for. And what? You just went to sleep because you made good money? Yeah, I'm going to let you think about that. Have a good one. I'll catch you next time.